Welcome back to the Recap Show. On today's episode, we will be talking about our recent trip to Kansas City, the NWSL Championship weekend, and we will get into the origin of the Recap Show. If you like what we're doing here on the Recap Show, please like, rate, and subscribe to YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a huge difference. Now, let's get into the daily discussion.
Welcome back to the Recap Show. We are so happy to be here. We love doing this with all of you. And before we get into the daily discussion, I wanted to let you know that our business, Re-Inc., has everything on sale like the rest of the world. This is a very important time for small businesses, so check out our stuff online and support us. We really appreciate it. For today's daily discussion, of course, we are talking about NWSL Finals weekend.
We are.
Tobin, why don't you tell us what you experienced? Obviously, we both got to be in Kansas City. We've now made NWSL Finals weekend kind of a part of our year, which is nice.
Yep.
People from all over the country that we work with, we play with, colleagues, mentors, investors come together to celebrate the best of the NWSL. What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was so cool. I have a couple mixed feelings about it because I feel like I kind of have like a love-hate relationship with my feelings about it. So I'll try to like...
You have a love-hate relationship with your feelings, period.
All right, we went there.
But go ahead, talk about that NWSL final.
So I think just to start off with, when I first heard that the NWSL final was going to be at, was it CPKC Stadium? I have many mixed feelings about that stadium because in one end, you just want to celebrate this first women's specific stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is historical. But this is the NWSL finals. Like this is our Super Bowl weekend. This is the biggest event. And we're playing in the smallest stadium of pretty much all of even the NWSL stadiums, the smallest one.
Mm-hmm.
And so like in one part, like I love celebrating what Kansas City is doing in women's soccer. But on the other hand, I'm thinking we're beyond this. We're so far behind this for a finals weekend. And, you know, we had just been in Vegas and all I could think about
here she goes.
is just how like the NWSL finals should be in Vegas, you know?
Okay, wait. Let me try to explain what it's like going to Vegas with Tobin. So Tobin hadn't been to Vegas since she was a kid. And I think she was quite blown away by the marketing.
The marketing, holy smokes, because we were there the weekend before F1 and you could not walk 2 steps without seeing F1 merch, F1 promotion everywhere.
Billboards, transportation.
And there's lots going on in Vegas, right? But like this was the weekend for F1. It was everywhere to the point where at the end of the weekend, I even was like, Christen, should we come back next weekend for F1? You know what I mean? And it's like,
well,
that
no, we'll
is
be at the NWSL finals.
Yeah, exactly. But so I had that in my mind, and thank goodness, because I think this is a good reminder, because a lot of folks to me when we were in Kansas City were saying like, wow, Kansas City did such a great job like promoting this. And all I could think about is when I got off the plane.
From the moment she touched down.
From the moment I touched down, it's like, it's still this feeling that you have to muscle. Like you have to have a muscle to find the thing that you're looking for in women's sports, as opposed to being smacked in the face with it every 2 steps. So even at the kiosks, you're walking and there's like Chief stuff in the front of the, whatever you call those things, the little bodegas in the airport.
That's what you call them.
I don't know, whatever, like convenience stores. What do you call them? Convenience stores?
Yeah,
they
shops.
have like the shops. They have like the Chief stuff. And then you kind of like go towards the back, you know, and then there's like, you'll see like Kansas City or like NWSL Championship, you know? And that's my problem. Like just for this weekend, every single front of everything in that city, just for this weekend, should have been NWSL Championship weekend.
And that's kind of the beauty of the way your mind works. And what I think makes you such a great entrepreneur is that, like, as soon as you saw Vegas, you were like, now I can see how I want this to be. And she was like skipping through the airport, like being like, we should be seeing the finals here. And then running over to the other, it should be here. And like, she was so excited. So like, it does sound like critical, but I think in the end, you're really just dreaming of a world where women's sports is shining and given the attention that it needs.
Yes.
I will say that we were hosted by Ally in a suite, and it was a beautiful suite.
Incredible.
Maybe the best height of any suite I've ever sat in.
Oh, I loved the height of, for anybody, everybody has to go see a game in this stadium because there probably is no better place to watch a women's soccer game. There aren't as many people as we'd like, but in terms of the actual game day experience, the suite was at a perfect level. Like, I loved the level of the suite, and I don't think there's a bad seat in that stadium.
Yeah, and I will say, obviously not necessarily the quantity that you were looking for, but the audience was super engaged.
Yeah.
And I love to see how in different cities, the crowd kind of is culturally reflective of where we are.
So nice. Kansas City is such a delight.
Yeah.
These people are incredible.
And I thought that everyone was super engaged in the game.
Yep.
You know, you have two away teams essentially. So you've got both their pockets of their fans, but then the rest of Kansas City was just super engaged and lovely and into the game.
Yeah.
And it made a great atmosphere.
Yeah, it was great. And something like that was really cool is we went to the NWSL Championship weekend last year, and you just see like year over year growth. Like, this is when, if you just go, you're like, I have to invest in anything to do with this, because year over year growth is absolutely insane. And even when I think of last year, like, you and I were there with like a couple players, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then this year was like everyone and their mom was there.
Yep.
And it was so powerful, and it's so cool to see all of like the former players being invested in the growth of the game and continuing to use their platform to grow the game. Because what I saw was like, this weekend has to be eventized. Like, there has to be 50 reasons other than the championship game that you're going to Kansas City. It can't just be like, oh, you fly in for the game, you fly out. No, let's eventize this. And the amount of shows that were being produced there, the amount of moments, parties,
partners, sponsors
that were there is huge. And like, that's what's so important to growing this weekend, because the game day revenue, like, it's not enough. It has to be like the games around the game, the events around the game that are going to continue to grow this, and to just see like our peers, see the sponsors showing up in big ways, to make sure that this is a weekend that honestly nobody wants to miss.
Well, I love that you said everyone and their mom was there, because actually Marta's mom was there. And I thought it would be the perfect way to segue into the actual game.
Kristen Anne-Marie Press.
What?
This is episode 15, and that was the best segue
Thank you.
of the whole season.
Thank you. But I mean, that was a special moment. And we got to see Orlando, who had been at the bottom of the table, and we had jokingly been saying this all season, win a championship. Marta win a championship.
Yep.
Talk about the game.
Yeah.
What stood out to you?
I think every neutral fan was either rooting for Orlando or feeling like Orlando was going to win.
Mm-hmm.
That was just like the feeling around, which always gives me a little bit uneasiness, because I feel like that's like when it's ripe for like an upset. But I think the scripted in a lot of ways in that game. I was disappointed from, I guess what I'd say, like, shooting blanks for the Washington Spirit. I just think like you don't play a championship and not score. Like, as attackers, like, that's just,
it hurts.
That's your job, and this is an entertainment business. People love to see goals. Like, you don't shoot blanks in a championship game. It's just like, I predicted a 2-1 Orlando, Washington. I think that would have been fun. It was a little disappointing because the first half is when Orlando scored. So the second half, there was like a lot of anticipation for more goals, and then it just never happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I as like a football fan, I kind of don't like that.
But I will say it was a quality game.
Oh my gosh, it was a physical game. Exciting. And it was an exciting game.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me off my seat a couple times screaming.
It sure did.
Yeah.
You were screaming right in my ear. But we had, I felt like it gave everything that I want in a final because, yes, I had reason to get up and to cheer for players, for individual players. And for, honestly, I thought Washington as a collective had a strong game. I think that's why you're disappointed they didn't score because they, dominated a lot of the stat sheets.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, look, what I've said this, a bunch of times, what Washington's building, like they're building for the long run. And this is just the beginning for them, I think, in a lot of ways with the injuries that they had and the type of season. They were just proud of getting to the final. But once you get to the final, then you want to win the final. But I think that there were a couple really, honestly, disappointing, but also I can have a lot of compassion for this. Like, I thought that, so much of that attack going to the final relied on Trinity having a big game performance, and it wasn't there. And there's probably 1,000 reasons why it wasn't there. Look, this is a player that has played a lot of football. She's played a lot of important football this year, and it's hard emotionally. It's hard physically. Like, she clearly has something nagging that, hopefully she's going to have a nice amount of break right now. But my problem is twofold in this. You're either going to do the damn thing and get it over the line, or we need a different strategy here, Washington. Because when the outside back, Abello for Orlando, picked up an early yellow card against Trinity, the fireworks should have been going off, because in that moment, you activate your best player every second in that matchup. It was an early yellow card. You activate her every second. You give her the ball. In any 1v1 situation, you give her the ball. Did it happen? No. So then you're kind of like, all right, maybe that wasn't the matchup. So in my mind, you either activate her on that side or switch her to the other side and give her a different view of the game,
which they did eventually.
Some more joy. They eventually did it in the second half, but I think that's a decision I would have started with earlier. And I think that's my biggest frustration is you give your best player the most amount of chances to be successful in the game. And that was a player that, wasn't impactful. And I will never blame it's not the individual in this situation. It's like, if she wasn't down for the game for physical reasons, we need a new strategy, Washington. And then I also think in the smallest of margins in these games, they had 2 corner kicks and people are like, oh my gosh, she's talking about corner kicks again. They had 2 corner kicks in the second half of the game. These are set pieces are gold. They're absolutely gold in any kind of important game. Completely wasted them. One didn't even go into the field of play. The second one didn't even make it past the first defender.
Okay, so I totally hear you, and it's
unacceptable.
I know how you feel about your corner kicks. But on the other end, so what you're looking for is the best player on Washington to come forward and what you said, quote, do the damn thing.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the game, we maybe had the best player of the game do the damn thing.
I will say also.
Oh no, what are you going to talk about?
I will say also, and I think Jonathan Giraldez is a fantastic coach. I'm very excited to have him in the league and to have him with this group. But I will say, and I know you're going to be upset that I'm coming back to this, Orlando was not a threat. The only place they were a threat was down the middle of the field with Barbara and Banda and Banda and Marta. And Washington should have gone to a 3-back. They should have been the flanks are nothing to us. Gone with a 3-back, added a number up into the attack, period. That was the easiest formation change that could have happened. And also it would have given you more security with Banda, because all she was going to do is operate down the center of the field. If you keep her wide, great. She's away from the goal. Anyways, on the flip side of it, every time Barbara Banda was activated in the attack or got the ball, I was off my seat.
I know. It's electric. I think what I want in sports, in finals, more than anything else, is for the best player, the storied player, the player that scored, to just do what they were put on the earth to do at the highest moment for all of us to watch. And it was, for me, I could not help. I was Team Banta every play. And you know what? It kind of reminded me of
basketball, where it was ISO ball. It's Banda got the ball. It was ISO. You know,
what's ISO?
It's like
what's ISO ball?
It's
anyone?
It's basically like her playing against the whole team. Like everybody was focused on trying to take her down, and
I love that.
I love that.
It was so cool, and like she was getting horrible fouls, and it was just like there is no stopping her.
Yeah.
You want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I think overall takeover for NWSL Championship weekend was holy crap. This game is a rocket ship. And
we are on it.
And we are on it. And we are putting fuel into it. And congratulations to the Orlando Pride on an absolutely incredible and deserving championship season.
Amazing.
Go Marta.
Welcome back to everyone's favorite segment, Community Questions.
Diana from San Jose wants to know, Kristen, I hear you like musicals. Do you have a favorite, and are you planning on seeing Wicked in the movie theater?
This is so funny because before we started the episode, I wanted to talk to our producers and do an over-under if we could make it through the episode without you talking about Wicked. And then you did, but it was so reading timely. A community question. Yes, we saw Wicked. Yes, we cried. Yes, it was incredible. I think the community question might not have said this, but if everyone wants to know what our favorite scene was, it was the Oz ball.
Is that what it was called? Oh, yeah.
And Tobin and I have done the dance multiple times since we saw the movie, which you'll understand once you see the Oz ball scene. Okay. Jackie from California wants to know, what's the one thing you always want to eat when you return home from traveling?
Oh, just healthy food. Like, get me to Erewhon as soon as possible for a detox, because coming back from Kansas City, I just felt like such doo-doo.
I know.
Traveling is the worst version, I think, of myself, because when you're in an airport, there's just such junk. Like, not to call out like Starbucks for being just like gross and sugary, but it's like I never go to Starbucks, right?
Well, it's like this. Tobin is extremely clean and has great discipline, but there's this child inside of her that like loves red vines. And like when you put her in an airport, she's just like, there is no healthy option, so I'm going to eat the worst food ever.
Yeah.
Until you're sick and have a tummy ache. Yeah. And then you get on the plane and you're bloated. It's a big disaster.
I was just like, so I just get home and all I want to do is just like eat clean again.
Well, I thought you were going to say you just want to eat my cooking.
Oh, you said Erewhon. You're right. I just want a home cooked meal. Like
any home cooked meal
on a nice, beautiful, beautifully set table.
By anyone? Anyone can set that table?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a preference. Joe from Florida asked, what was the most memorable thing you experienced at the NWSL Championship this past weekend?
This is a memorable thing. We did a live show at FanFest, and the way that Tobin and I generally prepare for shows is basically taking on the reverse of each other's personalities. So I am very planned and organized and prepared. Prior planning prevents poor performance. My dad told me that when I was like 4, so like that's who I am. And Tobin's laissez-faire and she's easygoing. But when we get ready for the recap show, we are in role reversal and I just show up and Tobin does everything for you guys. So thank you, Tobin. And I would say a very memorable moment was before the episode, Tobin was planning, had it in her notebook, and I was like, don't worry, I got you. No matter what happens, I got you. And I just thought to myself, like, I don't know how I got her because I don't know what's going to happen up there. And then we went out on stage and it was amazing. It was the very beginning of FanFest, so people were just entering and the crowd was phenomenal and loving and supportive. And Tobin and I were up there on the stage doing the live show, had each other's back. It was way harder than I thought it was going to be because there's a little bit of movie magic in here. And I think we did an okay job.
Yeah.
You know, in the end, it doesn't really matter because the sun was setting and our skin looked so good that that's all that anyone could see.
It's cool to have like first, like still like at this point, like what I'd say in our career to have like first and that was a first feeling.
Yeah, it was. And I think the memorable part for me is just like the feeling of like being unsteady, being up on stage, like trying to like feel the energy of the crowd, feeling your energy. We brought on our guests and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a lot. And just, it makes you feel like a human.
Yeah.
You know, like it's funny because you think like being on a stage with people watching you would not make you feel like a human, but it's like the most vulnerable thing.
Yeah.
And we just like, you just pray that people like you, because that's all you got.
Yep, that's all you got.
Especially when you don't prepare. All right. Well, that concludes today's community questions segment. If you'd like to get your question on the show, please consider joining our beautiful community of reimaginers. Our membership is an online space for changemakers and fans to come together to celebrate the game and to talk about how we can use the power of sport to make the world a better place. We'd love to have you. It is the coolest pocket of the internet. Tobin and I have the honor of interviewing some of the greatest athletes and changemakers in the world. And lucky for you, we are going to be doing just that today. She has been here on every episode, and she has sat in many of these chairs around this studio. But you know, Tobin is really the creator of this show, the visionary of the recap show. Something inside of her said 2.5 years ago that she wanted to reimagine the way women are seen and experienced in sport. And so all of us, reimaginers, hosts, guests, and fans alike, owe this quality content that we are bringing you a big thanks to her. So Tobin, why don't you tell us a little bit about why you wanted to create the show and what it means to you?
Okay.
It's clear you love attention. That must be why you're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall vision was actually much bigger than the recap show. It started with Remedia. It started with reimagining the way women are seen and experienced in sports. And that came from just an overall frustration that we all had.
What was the frustration?
That we never were able to see the fullness of women's sports in the content that was being produced in and around the sports. We never saw our culture being displayed. It wasn't defined. The tone wasn't there. The personalities weren't there. The expertise certainly wasn't there. And we still definitely have a long way to go. And I'm really excited about being, you know, part of that equation. And it's funny, I was even on a call the other day, and we're constantly having to like reevaluate like what is our own sports culture, because we can so quickly shift into just, you know, the sports that were before us as that being like the model of what sports are. But it's like, if you were able to do the sports all over again, what would they look like? And that's what has to ground me in my thinking. Because even when you work with folks that have, you know, been investing in, you know, the sports for so long, they see the game in a certain way. So that's kind of the way that they give their money to the sports, and they expect it to be shown. So it's always hard in the beginning to, you know, to be able to redefine something. It comes with a lot of friction, and the friction actually lies, you know, within ourselves a lot of times, trying to understand how we portray our own culture, how we talk about it, what it looks like. And also like on the media side, so that's kind of from like the bucket of, you know, the content piece of it, the creative content. But then on the flip side, it's like media is being kind of reimagined right now. Like, how do we consume media? How do we watch media, especially around sports, like especially around probably the last remaining live piece of content that will ever exist, which are sports. Like, how do we storytell around them? What does it look like in this digitally native world? And I think I constantly have to kind of reimagine that and reimagine where we are in the landscape of media, both as from a technology perspective, but also from a sports perspective.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's incredible that you have played so many roles within the game and have been able to wear so many hats and like always think forward. You always think about vision, what things could be, right? So I thought it would be fun for today to start from the beginning. And for you to tell us, before there was women's sports culture that you knew so well, before there was even an idea of media, when it was just you and the ball. You talked about, our game, our way. But I think your story really began quite organically with the love to play. So what was little Tobin, little footballing, giant calved Tobin like?
Curious. I'd say, like, of all the words I could use about myself, curious around my own ability. I think I always was able to pick up things really quickly. I have a curiosity that's around playfulness. Like, I love to try. I love to move my body. I love my imagination. I think imagination and sport are a really powerful tool, especially when you play a lot by yourself. I always would make up games. In any sport, with any ball or like anything around, there was always a game to be made up. And it didn't matter who I was ever playing against. Like, the skill level didn't matter, because you always can change the rules of the game to like put advantage into somebody else's favor. And I always remember this. My brother and I, we played so much together growing up, and he didn't play soccer at all. He was incredibly athletic, but like, he didn't play soccer. So, but we would play all the time, and we'd play with like little balls or like any round object, or anything that could be made up as a goal. And I remember, like, I would always be like creating these rules to give him as much advantage as possible.
So that you could hunt him down and beat him anyway.
Well, yeah. I mean, to make it competitive, right? Like, I think a lot of people try to say like, oh, I need to put myself like in, an organized competitive environment. It's like, well, why don't you just use your imagination and create a game that's going to be more difficult for yourself? Like, even when I would spend time with the ball, I would like create, like levels in my head. Okay, this is level 1 of what I have to do. And once I can master that, let's go to level 2, And I think that so much about like imagination, curiosity, and play is a big part of my journey as an athlete. And it also didn't keep me so locked in on just seeing myself as a soccer player, which is funny because, when I think about the sports that I played, the only technically organized sport that I played was soccer. But when I think about all of the sports that I
how
actually
to play.
played, it's like limitless, So I think that all of those things kind of made me kind of the athlete that I am today.
Well, okay, there's so much to unpack there. That was so good. First of all, I love the word imagination for you. I feel like we use a lot of other words, but like when you said that, I was like, that's it. Like, you're so imaginative. And then I started thinking about when you were talking about how you were like making up the rules and changing things about Minecraft and how you love going in and like building as you're navigating a space. And I can just imagine you like, as a little kid, when you go out to like do skills, like here's little Kristen and she's like, my mom said she'll give me $20 if I juggle 100 with my left foot. And I'm just kind of like 1, 2, 3, like the most basic thing. And then there's little Tobin who's like almost creating new games, which is bringing you the same amount of skills as playing those new games. Mm-hmm. Because just the ability to be able to design something requires a mastery that is probably very rare.
Yeah, maybe. I think it's kind of like allows you to then, like when you are in structure, right? It allows you the ability and the freedom to interpret like within the structure. So even, we just talked about the NWSL Championship game. It's like, while the game is gaming, can you still be imaginative in that, in how to change the game? Because the game it's so flexible, it's so dynamic, and it's so unpredictable. But your ability to then be able to take all of that kind of chaos and randomness and to try to make some kind of sense of it, to form a type of strategy to change it like in your favor.
So cool.
Is a really exciting part of it. And I think as a player, I really did that like on the field. I think I really played games within games, whether it was within my own matchups, whether it was in the type of energy like I wanted to give to the game, to my own teammates. And I always love that dynamic nature of being in the game.
I actually think that's like hitting on an incredibly important part. So if you think about matchups, the idea of matchups and being a player, like some of us have like a set of tools and it's like, I'm going to go against these players and maybe I have 3 tools that I can like try, right?
Yeah.
But I think as a player, you are probably best known for your ability to kind of create and design a problem that no one else could even see. And you didn't necessarily have a set of tools that you would just pick from. You would like create the tools as you go. So that's sort of like the whole theme of this.
Yeah.
Which I think made you a winner. And it made you able to play different roles on teams, and where, you know, some of us get success because we are specialists. You are the pluralist, you are the generalist, you are the wearing many hats 7. But what you brought to all of the things that you do was the fiercest, borderline unhealthy level of competitiveness that scares folks when the right version of you walks into the room. So why do you care so much if you win?
I think there's no one that I can be more competitive with than my own self. I think that's to start. And I think I go out and try to find the hardest matchup that I could ever find, because the only way I'm going to find a new part of myself is through competing. And I really believe that is kind of the unlock of all kind of my inspiration and creative potential is through competition. And I know some people that might be scary, but for me, I am attracted to it. I'm attracted to I guess the limitless potential in all of us. And
I think you're channeling your Wicked.
I am. I think so. I definitely am. But yeah, so I would say like I love competing.
So you're saying that like within competition, from competition, you're able to push your own bubble.
Oh yeah, like and
so really it's not necessarily about looking over your shoulder and beating the next person, but really seeing how far you can go.
Oh yeah.
And almost being inspired by other people's greatness.
Oh, entirely. And I had a coach once that told me when you go into any environment where you actually feel like you're not the best in that environment, you know, I think a lot of people, they kind of shy away from the things that aren't going to allow them to stand out. You know, I always saw players in environments, and if they weren't good at with their left foot, you know, they would do anything within like a drill or something to not use their left foot. And I was always the opposite. Like if something wasn't like making me uncomfortable, I really lean into the uncomfortable nature of something that I'm not able to do. I don't know. I find that maybe it's a sick and twisted way of having fun. I don't know, but that's because I like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of this life anyway? That's kind of a little bit of a segue, but
no, it's not. To me, it's it actually it is exactly what competition is to you. Because like I look at competition, I'm extremely competitive, but I look at it through this like discomfort with expectation. And I think as soon as you see something uncomfortable, you go straight forward.
Definitely.
And that's with competition, and that's with personal growth, and that's with like a fearlessness of trying new things. Yeah.
And I mean, if we want to go back to kind of where this all started, and the idea of like Remedia, like I went out, I still have the most massive vision for Remedia. It's huge. And I went out with my vision 6 months before the 2023 World Cup. I said, we're going to build a media division. It's going to be massive. I'm going out. I'm raising $20 million. I spent the next 4 months jamming to Blondie on my headphones before going into pitch meetings where I was asking folks for $20 million to support the gigantic Remedia vision.
Some of the most well-known investors
huge
and funds in the world.
Yeah, huge. And I think for a lot of people, they're probably like, that is insane, you know? And I'm like, yes. And like, not only do I have massive visions, but like, I also like, am like, okay, you still have to start somewhere. So even though, you know, I didn't get the $20 million and I didn't get the gigantic media vision, I put that into the world. It's out in the world right now, and it's working in ways that I couldn't even imagine. Yeah. But then I was like, well, we got to start somewhere. We're starting this World Cup. We're starting with the recap show. I'm going to raise enough money to start. And that's what happened. And since then, like Media has absolutely like exploded. We're defining what gal culture is in women's sports. We as talent are doing things we couldn't even imagine, using our voices and our platforms in different ways than just athletes. And we're having really impactful conversations. And is this absolutely just the beginning? For sure. But I think you kind of have to have that malleability to be able to stretch your imagination to the absolute furthest limit, but also to be so practical and disciplined to be able to just pick up a brick.
I love that you shared that story, because I think it's easy to see for anyone who's known you as a player to see how you're going to be a great entrepreneur, and use some of the same tools that have made you extraordinary on the pitch, make you extraordinary in behind a Zoom nowadays, or in a boardroom, or whatever they say. But one thing that I did want to ask you was, so you probably didn't even see this, but on Slack this morning, you were asked to put co-host of the recap show in all of your bios. So we have taken on this new role of co-hosting a show. And I wanted to ask what it means to you and what you have learned from this project that we are embarking on.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I mean, if you were to ask anybody that was closest to me during my time of playing, the thing that I was least likely to do after playing, it would be anything in front of a camera and talking. And I think that just gets back to your point, like, of this idea of being limitless. And I think when you're defining your own culture, like, who better to define it than the people that have done it? And I thought, you know what? This might be a responsibility that I never really wanted to have and I never really wanted to do, but I sure as hell don't want anyone else doing it for me. I don't want anyone else defining what our culture should be than the people that have done it. And, you know, as much as sometimes it feels like I'm being stretched in ways that, you know, I'm definitely uncomfortable with, and I do find it to be massively important. And I think when we were at the NWSL Championship Fan Fest, you know, the amount of folks that came up to us on letting us know the importance of what the show means to them and kind of what it has inspired, even in the ecosystem around us, like the amount of companies, the amount of shows now that like are happening, like that's the point. The point isn't for us to do it all. The point is to inspire everyone to take a piece from it and to blow it out, you know? And I think, you know, you always say, like, we're a lot bigger than the sum of our parts. Is that how it goes?
Yeah.
Something like that. But to just be an inspiration for, you know, the world that we're co-creating with a lot of other people so is important.
It is clear that you are driven by purpose, especially when it comes to hosting the show. But the day-to-day, what do you like about it? Do you like getting to pick out your outfit? Do you like having your hair and makeup done? How many notebooks have you filled up with ideas for what you might say when the camera turns on?
Yeah, obviously, like, I love being stretched. I love getting into my mind palace and, you know, creating. I love the outfits. Come on, it's so much fun.
You're going right back into the larger purpose.
It's an absolute joy, because if you really break it down, like, we are so intentional with this show. We are so intentional about every single piece of this show. It matters to us dearly. And it is a bit of a playground that, you know, we're still trying to figure out. And there's certainly more to come, but, you know, I was a Lego kid. You know, there was nothing like more fun than getting like your new box of Legos and like putting that first piece down. And like, this is certainly just the first piece of like a really cool building an infrastructure around, the sports, our sports. And building and creating has always been, I think, a part of my DNA. So that's what kind of wakes me up in the morning and gets me super energized around what we do.
We are all in a better world if you've helped lay some of the Legos down. And, I think that you are intentionally mysterious to those that don't know you or just know you as an athlete. I remember you saying you always just wanted to be an athlete. And I think we're lucky to get any other little piece of you, any of the other hats that you're wearing, because now you're so much more than that. You've always been so much more than that. And on my end, I love getting to talk to some of the people that we bring on this show. I love reuniting with our friends. I love meeting young players. Like, what a joy. But you will always undoubtedly be the best guest.
Want more of the recap show? Never miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.